Hi everyone, and welcome to this evening session of the day 2 of PyCon Sweden 2020. And here with me is Lilian, and she will tell us about the difficult times in education and teaching Python. Hi Lilian, and the stage is yours.
Hello, thank you for the introduction. My name is Lillian, I'm from the UK, and I will show you a video which I have pre-recorded about my talk, and then afterwards, if there are questions, I'll be happy to take them. So here we start. And I would like to begin by the title of my talk is Creating the Next Generation of Computer Literate Billionaires, Part 2, subtitle, Pandemic Lockdown, Online Teaching and Learning in Computer Programming for the Next Generation. This is Part 2, and Part 1 was given in PyCon Sweden last year. I will start with a bit about myself and a bit of background for the talk. I have a PhD and I am a member of the British Computer Society. I am interested in developing appropriate teaching methods for programming in Python for school children and encouraging them to take it up as a hobby like music. I am interested in building up a worthwhile computer science department. Now, we are all aware that computer science is regarded as one of the leading disciplines of the 21st century. Computers are ubiquitous and prevalent in most, if not all, sectors in our global society: medicine, arts, sciences, commerce, etc. And now, this global pandemic has highlighted the role of technology and computers as a positive critical force in the infrastructure. Indeed, if the FANGs, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google were a nation, they would be the third richest nation in the world, and they would be eligible for a seat in the G20. Thus, computer coding or computer programming is now regarded by many as an essential skill for any aspiring, ambitious, self-respecting young person in an aspiring nation, and it has been dubbed the fourth R, along with reading, writing, and arithmetic. In recognition of the new status and huge significance of computer programming, governments worldwide have launched initiatives to have it taught in schools, starting from the beginning of the school career in kindergarten through to junior school and all the way to secondary school. The areas in red on the map are some of the nations in which this is happening. So the question emerges is, how do we best teach and motivate the next generation in acquiring this all-important skill of computer programming? Now, there have been various writings about the challenges involved in teaching computer programming to children in this day and age. The Economist has written, the subject is so young that teachers and curriculum designers have little pedagogical research to guide them. To put this into context, if we look at other subjects such as history, geography, math, Latin, these have been taught for hundreds and thousands of years all over the globe. So there is a great deal of collective knowledge on how to teach and learn these subjects. In contrast, computer programming for children has only been around for the last few years, and thus there is little experience and knowledge about the teaching and learning of them. So, a couple of years ago, I undertook a venture to introduce computer programming to high school students aged 11 to 18 in the UK, and to build up a computer science department and ensure it is fit for purpose. Now, with a dearth of pedagogy and collective experience in the field, I decided to devise and implement my own framework in this area. And, wanting more resources to be made available, I made my own YouTube channel entitled Lil Anonymous. You may subscribe, for teaching computer programming and computer science. And I'm also waiting to publish a book in the early spring, a step-by-step Python guide for serious kids, mums, dads, grandpas, grandmas, and fifth cousins once removed. A decision was made to introduce computer programming using a bottom-up approach rather than a top-down approach. The bottom-up approach is a tried, tested, successful, and traditional method. They are applied to a problem. Now, this is not the only way of teaching. It is not at all unusual that this approach will be somewhat alien to the modern school student, who may have been taught predominantly from a top-down approach, whereby the problem is specified and they then delve further to see what tools are available to solve the problem. However, my approach was well received. This was then processed with an explanation that was provided that programs are analogous to essays, programming statements to sentences, key words analogous to words. We would therefore be learning about a key word at a time and learn about its uses before building up in due course to create more complex programs. The students appear to like this kind of explanation and buy in to the bottom-up concept. From time to time, I was asked by students questions such as, "Are you so fluent in the Python language?" Indeed, parents mention in Parents' Evening how much their children were enjoying and loving the subject. Also, the idea was to introduce a textual computer programming language, such as Python, from the very beginning, as opposed to any block-based language, such as Scratch. And the rationale for this was to look at what students did in other subjects at the young ages of 11, 12, and 13. Now, in English literature, the students studied the plays of William Shakespeare, such as You Like It and Romeo and Juliet. In maths, the students solved algebraic equations. In geography in the UK not so long ago, 11 and 12-year-olds were writing essays on the advantages and disadvantages of Brexit. So from this we surmised that young people at this stage are comfortable with and are able to manipulate symbols and deal with sophisticated text, and therefore concluded they should be able to cope with a textual programming language such as Python. And we had a good degree of success from this approach, with complimentary comments from students and parents about how much they were enjoying the subject. We also found that Year 7, that's the 11-year-olds, found computer programming easier than the Year 8, the 12-year-olds, who seemed to be better than the 13-year-olds, who seemed to be better than the 14-year-olds, who seemed to be better than the 15-year-olds. So starting properly from the beginning is better for both students and educators. So introduce these concepts as young as possible. Students felt happier with this teacher-led approach rather than a student-led approach or independent learning only at this beginning stage. And of course, the best students are the ones who are motivated to do well in the subject. We found a congenial home atmosphere is of course beneficial, and investment in terms of money in dedicated computer rooms, equipment in the school, as well as specialist subjects teachers is enormously helpful. Then, just as we were getting into a nice rhythm in mid-March, lockdown was announced, and we joined the worldwide online and teaching forum. We joined the estimated 900 million children in over 100 countries being educated online, and a new set of questions and challenges emerged. Now, bear in mind, this switch to online education appeared overnight, and again, there is no real precedence for this. So, here are the lockdown questions arising for online teaching during the pandemic. Question 1. How does this online medium of instruction compare with the established, well-respected, in-person, face-to-face medium of instruction? Question 2. Is it possible to engender a sense of competence, confidence, and independence to the students using this medium? Question 3. Is it possible for the students to enjoy the subject via this medium and produce something even more useful? So, with regards to the question on how the online medium of instruction would compare with the well-established and respected in-person medium of instruction, after a bit of soul-searching, it was really decided that mindset is the key here. And there are two ideas which really helped us shape our thinking in this. Now, the first idea is we should figure out what we really want before we calculate what we can afford, not the reverse. And this is an idea propagated by one Irving Kristol. This means that we should figure out what we mean to do and then persevere to work out a means of getting there. And the second idea is the medium is the message, an idea propagated by Cambridge alumni Professor McLuhan. This means that the online medium of instruction will have its own signature and its own set of strengths and advantages, which remain to be developed, and it remains for us to discover these strengths and advantages and exploit and capitalize on them. Now, building confidence, competence, and independence with this medium of instruction. Now, here we would like to empower the student. It is imperative that they have working programs if they are to feel confident, happy. And this means that the student should be confident and able to identify and correct his or her own syntax errors. To date, in the in-person teaching environment, the students have been writing code, putting their hands up, and every time there was an error, I as the teacher would rush towards them and correct the error themselves. The thinking was that as 11, 12, and 13-year-olds, they would be too young to be able to correct their own syntax errors, and they would find it boring and frustrating, and this would mar the enjoyment of the subject, as indeed it does to many adults. However, it is now a top priority, and if we were to proceed, then the student should learn this and learn it well. So a couple of sessions was devoted to this topic, followed by some testing. Now, it was, of course, introduced as a necessarily evil, but to our surprise, we found that the young students embraced the syntax error. And Nikita, aged 12, says, "To me, the most interesting part was the mistakes. When we made them, they could have been minor, but made such a difference. It was interesting to see how that counted and how intricate a system really is." And Alex, aged 11, said, "I have enjoyed learning how to create a code that generates a random password. I liked working on this partly because when I wrote it out, it had a syntax error. It made me experiment, which was very fun. After fixing it, I decided to improve it as well, which made another problem." And Alex, unprompted in the online class, wrote a program which randomly selects a card from a deck of cards. Note it has a syntax error. He corrected it sometime that evening of his own volition, sent a note at 8:15 a.m. in the next morning to say that he had corrected his program and that it works. So much for enthusiasm. And now on to the third question on how can students produce something even more useful? This would necessitate students learning about modules and functions early on, which meant debunking a myth. I, for example, had to change my ideas about functions, and I previously thought it would be quite hard for 11, 12, 13-year-olds to muster, and even harder online. But 5, 6, and 7-year-olds are comfortable with the idea of paragraphs in language. And really, the idea of processing blocks of information is not alien to young people, so functions and modules were introduced. So we started off by showing students a worked example how a simple function of adding to number works, with the idea of passing data to it and telling them how you can call the function. The students were asked to type in the worked example, get it running, and then make up their own examples. So here we have examples of the functions from Alex, aged 11, the ones that he created. We see he has extended the ideas in the addition function by passing in real numbers, not just integers, and we see he has written a function called multiplication, where he's passing in 3 numbers. And this is what Alex said about functions. I enjoyed learning about functions, i.e. modules, and how to define them so you could access them at any moment. And here we have the functions Deepu, age 12, has created. You see he has created 2 extra functions, division and subtraction. He has also created a function where strings are being passed in. It is interesting to know that we did not have to create the exercises, but they managed to express the creativity in their programs. We decided to push the limits a little bit more and introduce the students to the concept of using functions for modeling and simulation. For this, we also introduced the concept of an external file, so there was an additional level of complexity, and introduced the concept of graphical representation of data. Could we do all of this online? This is a program, a function, produced by student Siobhan, age 13, which uses external files, and she has put the Fibonacci sequence in it. So, going back to the mindset and Irving Kristol's quote, we should figure out what we want before we calculate what we can afford, not the reverse. This way of thinking about issues certainly helped, and on the way we made both pleasant discoveries of what was possible and also the tools that were available. This included online editors such as www.repl.it, where you can both share code and screens and take over a screen so you can correct code. Also, we started to use the chat facilities in Microsoft Teams for purposes other than chatting, but sending code from student to teacher and vice versa. And in saying all of this, we do feel that we are in the first generation of online learning tools, and there is a lot of development in the years to come with the willing participation of students, teachers, and schools. Now, here is an example of some initiative and enjoyment from a student, Peter, age 12. He writes, "Miss, I can't share my screen, so I posted what I did on Python. It generates 6 random digits to use for an iPhone password." So, if we revisit the original framework, we need to modify it to include syntax, which is punctuation, and a greater emphasis on modules. Indeed, I will include that in the in-person teaching much earlier now. So, conclusions and the way ahead. Some of the strengths of the online medium of instruction are: online medium promotes good listening, which leads to better understanding. The online medium unleashed a healthy creativity from the children, the students. The online medium promotes structure. It is a very unforgiving medium for a lack of structure in lessons. And online mediums provide ease of access, 24/7 access. In future, we can import some of the practices of the online medium of instruction into in-person, face-to-face teaching. Many exciting developments in online teaching in the next few years with the willing participation of students, educators, and schools. And this is the first generation. And in years to come, the scale of the venture will surely be considered as one of the greatest experiments in online teaching in the history of mankind. Thank you very much. And as a reminder, my YouTube channel, Lil Anonymous, please have a look and subscribe. A new book coming out in early spring, a step-by-step Python guide for serious kids, mums, dads, grandpas, grandmas, and fifth cousins once removed. I have a website, https computer science GCSE A-level.wordpress.com. Can be contacted on email demo909@yahoo.com. And Albert Einstein said, I never teach my pupils, I only attempt to provide the conditions in which they can learn. Thank you very much for your time. And do you have any questions?
Thank you, Lillian. Well, an excellent talk. I guess there was a bit of technical problem on our side, so not all the slides were shown. Okay, as long as the video is there on YouTube.
We will be moving through the first couple of pillars of the educational transformation framework from Microsoft. So without any further delay, let's...
Oops, sorry. Okay, go.
Yes, something was playing in your computer, I guess. It's fine. So we've got a comment from Alexander. Would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, he writes, very interesting, especially fun to hear about the syntax errors. I too was very interested in that because I thought there would be a lot of resistance to learn about syntax errors, but actually they were really fascinated about it. And, I gave them a PowerPoint and we spent a couple of lessons on different types of syntax errors. We talked about it a lot over the online lessons, and they took it all in their stride, really. So what I thought was a barrier was not a barrier at all, and I learned I should not make assumptions before I actually introduce things to people.
That's a very interesting perspective. Indeed, that's yeah, one should not have assumptions introducing something to kids, I guess. What do you think about, say, in general? What do you think in general about all these new machine learning tools, or they are often called the AI tools, that actually do the coding themselves, like those? I guess they are based on this GPT-3 model and others, where basically you or student can enter the name of the method or a function, and then the model will build a function itself. Do you think they are useful or useless, or I don't know, dangerous for the students?
I haven't actually. I must admit, I haven't actually played with them myself. Having said that, even if you do enter something and it does build it does build something for you, there must have been somebody who has developed the building of whatever module or function it is. And, I think it is helpful. I think every sort of person or all the students should really know how to actually develop something themselves, or the thought processes, irrespective of whether or not something else is doing it for you. To have those ideas about how to build something, what kind of method, thinking through something, structuring something, the methodology of something, sort of are all kind of helpful things for your life as such. Yeah.
So am I getting that correctly, that you assume basically students are good intrinsically, and they would not use, for instance, these models to cheat on their assignments? Because that is the immediate danger I can foresee. If you give a student an assignment to write a program that would calculate, I don't know, a square root, and then the student just takes a model and names the method square root, and then the model itself writes all the functionality there.
Okay, I don't know if any student of mine's been doing that, but well, actually, having said that, you do have students that look things up, but you know, I don't really mind so much that they look things. Say I say write a program to write a square root, and they look it up to find the square root, and they get the program. But then afterwards, what they do is to go over it themselves, line by line, to see how it is done.
Yeah, that makes sense indeed.
Yeah.
So that's already useful. Okay, very interesting. Thank you very much for sharing with us. And maybe some questions will arise on Slack as well, so keep an eye on that. And could you share the link to your YouTube video with us on Slack as well? We will post it.
Sure, I will do that.
Fantastic. Enjoy the remaining, say, what is it, like 1.5 hours of the meeting, and then perhaps see you next year.
Yes, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks a lot.